getting the lowdown on Giants first-round pick, 7 overall, Evan Neal. And who better to give us that information than Luke Robinson, co-host of the LockedOn Bama podcast. That's coming up next on today's LockedOn Giants podcast, brought to you in part by BlueNile.com.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Traynor here with you, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you are watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And as promised, ladies and gentlemen, I'm bringing on a variety of different Locked On college hosts to talk about some of the players that the Giants picked up over the draft weekend and in undrafted free agency. And I'm going to kick things off with our first round draft pick, Evan Neal, offensive tackle. So joining me from the Locked On Bama podcast is one of the co-hosts, Luke Robinson. He's going to tell us everything we need to know about Evan Neal. Luke, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it, as always. All right, so Luke, let's get the general overview here. What exactly are the Giants getting in Evan Neal?
You're getting a great guy. Look, he's not quite what I call a Saban bot. That's a guy like Jonathan Allen was a Saban bot, a guy who just, was always lockstep with what Nick Saban was all about, all business all the time. But I think Evan Neal is, frankly, a little nicer than that. He's just a good dude. Y'all are going to love him. And the one thing about Evan Neal, I think that he almost doesn't know how good he is. That's one thing that just strikes me watching him so long as a fan. He's huge. He was 380 pounds when he was, I think, in the 8th grade. I mean,
wow.
he's right at 6'8". Now he's probably more in the 340 range. He got to Alabama, lost a lot of weight, got in a college program and lost all that bad weight. And now he's just a mountain of a human being. He almost looks like a guy out of Game of Thrones, just sort of a monstrous human being. But at the same time, very nice, handles himself incredibly well. In fact, juxtapose this against Kayvon Thibodeau, the Giants' other pick, right? I think that the Giants, in my opinion, probably got the two guys with the most potential in the draft. I think they hit a home run with both of these guys. Now, having said that, I think both of them are good guys. But I also think Evan Neal doesn't have quite the ego that Kayvon Thibodeau does. And I'm not saying that, out of spite or anything like that. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be a superstar. But I think that it seems to me coming into the league, Thibodeau may need to be humbled just a little bit, whereas I think Evan Neal needs to be built up. Even though he's been around so much winning, he's just so unassuming that you almost want him to every now and again get a little bit meaner. Now, it makes it sound like he's not a great offensive lineman. In my opinion, he was the best player in the draft. I'm a homer, I'm a bammer, but I think he was the best player in the draft. And so I think the Giants got an absolute steal. And it's kind of crazy to think mock drafts about, 2 or 3 months ago, probably had Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau going 1 and 2 in some order, and the Giants get both of them? That's crazy.
Yeah, that really is. And, you brought up a point I was going to ask you about. Is Evan Neal a little maybe too nice? Because, you think of offensive linemen, you want Bulldogs out there, not Georgia Bulldogs, obviously, but you know what I mean. So, is he too nice? You mentioned he has to be built up a little bit. What were they doing down in Bama to maybe build him up, or were they building him up at all? Or how can they build him up here in the Giants?
Well, maybe I oversold this a little bit because, to play for Alabama right now, you've got to have some confidence in yourself. There's no doubt. You've got to have an ego. That team is full of alphas. This team, Alabama, is full of 5-star guys. Ohio State's kind of the same way. Georgia the same way right now. These are teams that are filled with incredible talent. I mean, high-ranked kids coming out of high school that have always been the alphas, right? But I feel like he was the best offensive lineman in the country to me. I thought he was the best player in the draft. At the same time, he wasn't quite as much of the leader as I thought he could be. It's not that I don't think he wanted that role, but he probably looked around and look, that Alabama team had a elder statesman in Brian Robinson, who you guys will be going up against with the Washington Commanders. They had Bryce Young, who won the Heisman Trophy, who a lot of people looked at as a leader. So they had a lot of, this Alabama team had a lot of dudes that could be leaders. And I feel maybe Evan Neal felt like, that isn't the role I necessarily have to take, which, hey, there's a positive to that too. If you know your role, there's a positive side to that. However, I think that Evan Neal has so much potential. And I mean that, boy, it almost sounds like I'm insulting him, and I don't mean to. As the words come out of my mouth, I feel like I'm selling him short. I think he's got so much potential, and he's just got to, if somebody will tap into it, I think he could be the best offensive lineman in the NFL eventually.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, this Mother's Day, give Mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500 with the code LOCKEDON. That's right, this podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day, and that code again is Locked On. Blue Nile offers a diverse selection of rings, bracelets, earrings, and necklaces, so you're sure to find something to celebrate that special event for that special someone in your life. Every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free today and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com and remember that promo code LOCKEDON to save $50 off your order of $500 or more today. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up for you on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, no business owner wants to deal with the hassle of energy decisions. You just want your business to run smoothly and to pay for a fair rate for power. But coming off the back of one of the highest priced winters in the last decade, if your business was on a purely variable or market rate, you paid out of the nose. Many New York business owners switched suppliers out of frustration, but unless they chose alternative pricing options, they're still at risk for a January repeat. Catalyst Power partners with you or your trusted energy consultant to provide a power supply plan that fits your business's need. They have a suite of options customizable to your business's need, including options that bundle with or focus on renewable energy. Right now in New York, they're offering on-site solar solution for your business that requires zero installation, maintenance, or material purchase costs. That's right, no capital expense costs for you. And to sweeten the deal, qualified businesses could be eligible for up to 6 months of at-cost energy supply from CatalystPower.com. Go to CatalystPower.com/LockedOnGiants to learn more. Let's talk about his football prowess. Now, this is a young man, versatile comes to mind. I mean, he played a little bit at guard. I think he played both tackles. Let's start with the tackle spot. What does he do well at tackle? What does he need to improve at tackle?
Well, you're right. I mean, versatility is huge, and just like he is. And to be able to play all of those roles, I think speaks a lot about his willingness to learn, his willingness to adapt, his coachability. Those are all big positives. Now, as far as the tackle goes, look, he wasn't the kind of guy that gave up a lot of sacks. His pass blocking is phenomenal to me. He's one of the better pass blockers of the Saban era. His run blocking is really, really good. It's probably the lesser of the two. Again, when you're 6'8" and you're that big, your center of gravity is going to be a little bit higher. So it can be a little bit tougher. If low man wins, it can be a little bit tougher for him sometimes. I think that that's something that'll be coached up, certainly. He got great coaching at the University of Alabama. I'm not intimating he didn't. That being said, I would rather have a good pass blocker in the NFL than a good run blocker, because passing is what the NFL is all about now. I mean, even in the short passing game is sort of the new running game, right? And the quarterback is the most valuable player on the team. You've got to protect him at all costs. So I think having a better pass blocker is more important than having a better run blocker. So Evan Neal is a great, great pass blocker. And again, here's one thing that should a reason that I feel like he fell way too far in this thing. That, okay, you want to talk about Trayvon Walker, by the way, who went number 1. I think he's a really great player. Alabama played him a few times, really good on a great defense. A Georgia team that had 15 guys drafted. That's awesome. Evan Neal faced off against him. Evan Neal faced off against 17 guys who went in the first round. Now, he didn't play against them just mano-a-mano, but what it tells me is he knows what it is to play against greatness. And then on top of that, he has been facing off against guys like Will Anderson, who could be the number 1 pick in next year's draft, in practice at Alabama. So he's been around the Alabama culture, so he knows about that. He knows every time that he steps on the field, going back to high school days at IMG Academy, which I know they can't play for state championships, but they are probably considered the best high school program in the country. He's been going up against greatness in high school, and now he's gone up against greatness in practice at Alabama, in the SEC, which is unquestionably the best conference in college football. And, so he's got this great mentality and experience in going up against great players. So I feel like that's one thing that will certainly be an advantage for him, going up against guys like, Jonathan Allen, an old teammate at Alabama with the Commanders.
What about at guard? I know he's played some guard, and there was some talk that maybe down the line, the Giants, if they get another offensive tackle, they might move him inside the guard. I don't know if he's maybe too tall for guard, but I know he's played that position. What are his positives and need improvement areas, and if he were to play guard?
Well, he played a lot of guard at Alabama his first year, and he did a really, really good job. I mean, he was one of the top freshmen in the country. I think he made just about every all-freshman team you can make. That being said, in terms of technical breakdown, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm sort of the opinion that he is too tall for that. He's too big, and he's so good at left tackle or right tackle if you want to put him there if you have a left-handed quarterback. Why would you take him away from the position that's going to protect your most valuable asset? That would be my thing. To move him to guard, I would feel like that would be a huge mistake eventually, unless he's not working out at tackle, which I don't think is going to happen, because I feel like he's about as surefire of a pick in the first round as there is. Again, the problem with going to guard, when I think about guards, I think more about run blocking, right? And if I'm taking away his best strength in pass blocking, and I'm putting a guy at guard who's 6'8", it just something about that doesn't seem right, even though he's played the position.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's going to stay at tackle, but you mentioned left tackle. The Giants already have Andrew Thomas, former Georgia, at left tackle. So it looks like, unless the Giants are going to pull a switcheroo, that Evan is going to play right tackle. So that being said, I believe he played most of his snaps at left tackle. Again, he did have some right tackle snaps, but how much of an adjustment do you think it's going to take for him to really nail down that right tackle spot? And, do you think he would be a fit for that?
Oh, yeah. He played mostly right tackle as a sophomore. So, the majority of his snaps. So this year he plays left tackle. He just moves over and plays left tackle. And again, he played most of his snaps at guard his freshman year. So he knows all these positions. I think he'll do really well. Very smart kid too, by the way. So it's not like it's something where you're going to be starting from scratch. As an Alabama fan, I can tell you, I talk about Braden Smith, who's an offensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts. He played at Auburn, and he played on an Auburn team that was very good, went to the national championship game in 2013. But when he got to the NFL, because Auburn's scheme was so unique to the college game, they almost had to relearn him a lot of the scheme, apparently. So goes the story. And now Braden Smith's become a very, very good offensive lineman. Well, I think Evan Neal, he's already pretty seasoned.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, and they taste great. Built Bar offers 9 amazing flavors in nut and nut-free variety. Plus, they offer a rotating limited-time offering of different flavors that changes up every so many weeks. So head on over to BuiltBar.com today and see what their current flavor lineup looks like. Use our special promo code LOCKED15 and you'll save 15% off your first order. Again, that's code LOCKED15 for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. What kind of scheme did they have the offensive linemen running down there? Was it zone blocking? Was it power gap? I mean, what did they run down there, and where does Evan kind of excel, or does he excel in all of them?
I think he pretty much excels in all of them. In Alabama, mostly sort of a zone blocking scheme for sure. But I think that because Alabama's always in the playoffs, because they play in the SEC where you've got this multitude of defenses that you're facing and a lot of great defensive players and guys that love to swap it up. You have some great defensive minds like a Kirby Smart. I mean, you're going up against him. Alabama played him twice last year. Then I think he can adapt to any scheme that the Giants want to throw at him. I think he's, again, going to be just fine. There's not going to be anything over Evan Neal's head, is what I should say. And again, Alabama did some RPO stuff, so you have to be aware. I don't know how much the Giants do any of that with Daniel Jones. I don't know if that's really his forte.
There's some I think they're going to do.
Well, I think everybody's got to do some now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not in your repertoire, you're falling behind. But anyway, I feel like whatever the Giants want to throw at him, it's not going to be over his head.
Basic technique. Let's talk about that for a moment. Where does he need to get better? Is it with hand placement, footwork? Does he bend at the waist a lot? I mean, where do you think he really needs to adjust so that he doesn't get overpowered in the NFL?
Yeah, I do think it's balance. I do think it is, bending at the waist and balance. Now, he can be, again, he's got an incredible reach. So these guys that try to come at him with quickness, he can just keep him at arm's length. And he's also still very powerful at 340 pounds. He can certainly just face a bull rush pretty well. And as I said, he's gone up against Will Anderson in practice all these years, and Chris Allen, who also just signed with the Denver Broncos, and Dallas Turner, who will be maybe a first-round pick here in the coming years. I think that he knows how to deal with the quickness of some of these NFL guys. He's played a lot of guys that are going to play in the NFL. But the NFL is always, you can be as prepared as you want, and you can play in the SEC, and you can do this, you can do that. When you get to the NFL, you know this. I mean, it's a different animal. That's the best of the best.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of which, the New York market is nothing like down south there. It's a dog-eat-dog type of world. It's very the spotlight is about as hot as you can find. Given what you know about his personality, I mean, he strikes me as a laid-back country boy, takes it easy. Nothing seems to rattle him. I mean, what about that temperament and the challenges of playing in New York, especially for a team that, let's face it, the last decade or so hasn't been very good, and there's a lot of expectations?
Yeah, I think that, he is from the South. He is from a smaller community in Florida, and then he goes to IMG Academy. But, having played at Alabama right now, that's about as close, I guess, as you can get to being with an NFL team. In terms of the amount of spotlight that's on you week to week. They're always, in the game of the week. Alabama's rarely playing at that, not very coveted 11 o'clock time slot. They're always playing, prime time, CBS 2:30, wherever they travel. They're getting a lot of press and a lot of hatred, really. So I think that he's going to be okay with that. The transition's not going to be that bad. He's not going to be Broadway Joe. I mean, he's not going to go there and start wearing fur coats and advertising pantyhose. And he's also not going to be the most outspoken player on the team. But I think when he does talk, people are going to listen. And I do think when he does talk, you're going to be proud of him as an organization. New York can swallow some folks alive. There's no doubt about it. I've been there several times, but I'm an Alabama guy. And, man, when I go there, it is rather intimidating. I mean, you go from, these wide open spaces to these, straight up buildings where you look around, you almost feel enclosed. But he kind of looks like a skyscraper himself, so maybe he'll fit in.
Certainly. I mean, they call New York a concrete jungle because of all the skyscrapers and stuff, but he's playing in New Jersey. New Jersey's kind of a cross between, New York, depending on where you go.
But did you see he didn't even know the Giants played in New Jersey? That was pretty interesting. Yeah.
I thought that was so charming. All right. Now, final question for you, Luke. We had an opportunity to speak to his head coach down at IMG Academy, and he spoke about how this kid just seems to know when to speak up, when not to speak up, which is a very rare trait for a young player. I mean, most young players come out of college, they think they have the world by the you-know-what. They're not, they think they're the big man on campus, only to realize that, hey, they've got to start at the bottom, just like everybody else in every other profession. That being said, I mean, there are going to be a lot of big personalities on the Giants. Thibodeau, obviously, some of the veterans. How do you think this Evan Neal's going to achieve that balance? Because it is tricky to know when to speak up. I mean, he's going to be looked at as a leader. If he's a starter, he's going to be looked at as a key part. I mean, so just finding that balance based on what you know about the personality of this young man. How's this all going to kind of, if you had to take a guess, play out for him? Is he going to be a rah-rah guy? Is he going to be lead by example? What kind of leader do you think he'll be?
I think he's just going to be the kind of guy other players don't want to disappoint. That's what I think. I think he's going to command that kind of respect, almost a gentle giant, quiet leader. Some of this stuff is so cliche, but he's not going to be the offensive lineman that's going to get over there and get in other offensive lineman's face. I've never seen him do that. He's not going to just, put his, bang his fist up against somebody's shoulder pads and tell them, get their head in the game and all that. I think he's just going to go out there and do what he's supposed to do very, very well for a very long time. And I think that, when you look at something like Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, again, I just think it's so interesting the Giants got both those cats. I mean, what a draft. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Polar opposites in personality at any rate.
Yeah, and I feel like, the Jets, I know you don't want to say the Jets and the Giants had two of the best drafts to me. I mean, it's crazy that those two teams had the best drafts. But anyway, I think Thibodeau is more likely to have a MTV show in the offseason about his lifestyle. Whereas Evan Neal, people are going to be like, has anybody heard from Evan? And you know where he is? Oh, he's working out, or he's doing community service, or he's he's helping some of the younger players learn technique. I think that's going to be the kind of guy he is. And again, there's nothing. I'm not trying to diss Kayvon Thibodeau. There's certainly a place in our society for that. People love that swagger, and if you're a defensive lineman, or defensive end, you definitely want to have an attitude about you and a dog in you. But I think there's also something to be said for the quiet leader that I think Evan Neal will be. You guys are going to be really, really proud of it.
Yeah, well, what do they always say with offensive linemen? If you're hearing their name called, that's not necessarily a good thing. Whereas with defensive linemen, that is what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Because, offensive linemen are doing their job. One last question for you. What's something about Evan Neal that maybe the Giant fan base doesn't know, but they need to know, whether it be a charitable organization that's close to his heart, or, anything in general? What can you tell us that we could kind of sink our teeth into?
The one thing I'd say is, I guess a couple of things. And the one thing that was kind of cool there, I don't know if you guys are familiar with down here, there are lawyer billboards everywhere. We have one, Alexander Shinora, that is everywhere. He's actually a friend of mine, super nice guy. There's also a lawyer firm called Morgan & Morgan down in Florida, and they've gone absolutely huge with their advertising campaign. I thought it was really interesting. They actually had Morgan & Morgan had a billboard with Evan Neal on it. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then the other thing I would tell people, if you hadn't seen it, I know you have. You have to. If you're a big-time Giants fan, you're listening to this, you're a big-time Giants fan. So I know you've seen this, that the box jump he did, a 48-inch box jump, where he jumps up flat-footed, and there's a box on either side 4 feet high. And he puts one leg on one and one leg on the other and keeps his balance. How many wide receivers can do that? It was crazy athleticism. And those are the kind of things that jump out to me about him. As far as his personal likes and charitable contributions, all I've heard is, hey, this guy's just a good dude. Now, I don't know exactly what he contributes to, but if you told me Evan Neal's working in a soup kitchen tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I don't know, but I do know this. Again, he's going to be the kind of guy that you want to be the face of your organization.
That's good to know. I tell you, when I first saw him, the first picture I saw of him, I thought, my gosh, he's so studious looking. So,
Yeah.
just it was because some guys are very flashy. They got the bling all over, and here's this young man. He's got the glasses, and he's got a very serious look on his face. And I'm thinking to myself, ooh, serious dude here.
And man, I'll tell you something. I loved the drip on draft night. His suit was on point. I think it's cool when some of the other guys wear socks with their own faces on it or whatever. But Evan Neal his suit was who he is. He wore a really, really nice suit that stood out, but it wasn't like, oh my God. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Kind of reminds me a little bit. Now, I go back 30 years of covering the Giants. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kareem McKenzie, who is a very studious, very smart, big man who played right tackle for the Giants in 2007. He was part of that Super Bowl 42 championship team. So, I can't help myself. When these players come through, I kind of say, oh, that guy reminds me of this one, whether it be their physical appearance, their face or their demeanor or whatever. And that's what jumped up. And I loved Kareem McKenzie. I thought, he was like one of the smartest men on the team at the time. So that's kind of how Evan Neal has struck me, not just in appearance, but also when he opens his mouth.
That's why I'm so high on Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau, for that matter. I mean, they've had the spotlight on them forever, and they've played in big college football games, and they played against great competition. And I feel like that's got to count for a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every little bit helps, and it's going to be a tough transition. It always is for a rookie. A lot of rookies come in, and it's all what they make of it. Some guys come in and they think they got it made. I've seen many first-round picks that the Giants have had where they've just sat back and thought they had all the answers. And then I've seen those come in, put their head down, put their nose to the grindstone, and really work at their craft. I think Evan Neal is going to be one of those guys that puts his head down and just works on his craft. And it's good that he's going to go against Thibodeau. I think that's going to be an interesting battle to watch during the summer. I'm sure he will see his fellow rookie in training camps.
Well, I'm going to say this. I don't know if you get a chance to interview these cats, but if you do get a chance to talk to Evan Neal after a few practices, ask him how going up against Thibodeau relates to going up against Will Anderson. That would be an interesting
Definitely. Question. Oh, I definitely will. Yes. Thanks for that tip. All right. Well, I really appreciate the time, Luke. And, I don't know what you guys got going on, but you can find Luke and his co-host Jimmy Stein over on LockedOn Bama. They do a great job. I think right now you're doing your spring stuff is done, right? Or
yeah, we've already had our spring game. We're sort of always hot and heavy in recruiting. I mean, Jimmy and I are both big recruiting guys from way back in the day. And so, yeah, we get John Garcia on all the time, who just joined the LockedOn family. He's with SI.com. And he does a marvelous job recruiting. And right now, Alabama's in the middle of the Arch Manning sweepstakes. So that's something to talk about daily.
Oh, that's a big one to keep an eye on, too. So, All right. So people, you'll want to check out LockedOn Bama. They do a great job. Check out all our college programs that we have here on the LockedOn Network. We're going to have, like I said, additional hosts coming on. So really excited to have had this opportunity to speak with you, Luke, about Evan Neal. He sounds like a great guy. I haven't officially met him one-on-one yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'll definitely be reporting on him, and I look forward to bringing Giant listeners and readers of Giants Country, which is the SI channel, Fan Nation channel that I write for, everything they need to know about this Giants draft class. So, all right. For Luke Robinson, I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day or your first watch if watching on YouTube. Keep it here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. We're going to have more interviews with our LockedOn College colleagues who are going to tell us a little bit more about some of these draft picks and undrafted free agents. So until then, everybody, have a fantastic day.